Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dave Cooper Live, where each week we feature the people, the products, and the process helping us all build it better. And if you tuned in to Monday's show with Henry Mickelberg and Jamie Parr, you will know what we mean. What is better? How do you define that? Well, perhaps today you may discover that for today's guest, deliver better means simplicity and style. We're talking about a building systems approach from kitchen faucets to building facades. What if you could optimize the most challenging design elements in any home or building and easily insert them into any build? Repeatability, predictability with availability. Isn't that what all builders want out there? It's the assembled approach with building materials provider KOVA, promising to make the selection, installation, and future replacement of building products a controlled, easy process, delivering high quality and design results. Please welcome Ken Gentert, Vice President at KOVA Products, as he shares these scalable solutions that can be flat packed, shipped, and installed to reveal bespoke outcomes, saving builders from time-consuming building material sourcing and benefiting from the service a single partner can provide. And be sure also to catch all of these conversations by subscribing to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Dave Cooper Live. Well, before we welcome Ken, we have to give a big shout out to our partners who support us each and every day. So a big shout out to Forward Solutions Group, who is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Learn more about Forward's recent acquisition of Moducore, an ERP solution for offsite manufacturing. Contact Ben Hershey to learn more, Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. And no stranger to this game of building materials and systems, Howick Ltd., with a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing, and produces innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the U.S. and the world. You want to check out their Machines Buyer Guide for offsite modular construction, or as we want to call it, fast build construction with light steel for framing. Please check them out, howickltd.com. All right, let's get into today's show and welcome Ken. Ken, how are you today?
Good, Dave. Thanks for having us. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm super excited about today's conversation because you guys are really focusing on a lot of pain points in the market right now. There's a lot of things happening that you guys are saying, wait a minute, we are coming up with a better way of doing this and better solutions to do it. But before we get into that, Ken, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital. We'll have Bridget come on the show, and I'm sure she will spill the beans on you. So, but you only have 2 minutes to do it. Go for it.
All right, 2 minutes. So, I was born and raised in California, and I've had the opportunity over a career to work in a bunch of different fields, from semiconductors to fuel cells to satellites, and then now in the construction field, right? And so it's been an opportunity to take all of these different experiences, different markets, different supply chains, and really look at it and see what goes well, what doesn't, and then to apply it into the construction industry, whether it's integrating new suppliers, new approaches, logistics paths. It's something that affords us an interesting opportunity to look for this, and we're just excited. We're excited with what KOVA has to offer. What we have rolling out right now, and then what we're going to tease out today that's coming out through the rest of the year. We're really excited, and we're looking forward to really making a big splash on all of this.
Well, sure. Well, we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to make a big splash right here on Dave Cooper Live and talk about what you guys are doing. So, I mean, the approach that you're taking with the different product lines that you have, and we'll get into that in a minute, really ties into what your mission statement kind of is, right?
Mhm.
KOVA, go build. Why don't you
Yeah.
explain where that has come from?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges when you get on a job site is getting your material there and then actually going vertical and building, right? And then that continues to be a challenge throughout the entire process, right? Subs get held up, trades get held up, and then that domino effects down, right? And so, our mission is really simple. Our mission is to make sure that there's materials ready to go, ready to build, and then it's the right materials done in a responsible, sustainable fashion that are also thinking about tomorrow, today, right? And so that's really what we want to do. It's simple. We want to make sure that our partners and our customers have their material and that they're ready to go. They take care of the building part, and we make sure that they've got what they need.
Listen, everybody, if you're just joining us, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So get your tweets on if you're out there, and make sure you subscribe to the Dave Cooper Live Show to listen to all of these great, I would say, inventors of new business in the world that's out there today, trying to all help us build it better. So listen, Ken, isn't taking a different approach, risky? I mean, here you are, and we're going to get into these different product lines in a moment, but you guys are taking a different approach. Isn't that risky from your eyes?
So from my eyes, no. I mean, obviously everything we do has some level of inherent risk to it, right? Whether it's availability, logistics, performance, everything like that. But, a lot of times this market identifies risk as different, right? So if it's not the way that it was done the previous 10 years or the previous 10 builds, it's like, well, that's a risk because it's different. And, what we really challenge people to think about is that, break it down instead of just looking at it as a holistic picture. Start breaking it down and ask, what is different, right? So, is it because you're coming to single person to get a lighting package, faucets, and window wall? Is that what's different? Because typically you would go to an electrical distributor, a plumbing distributor, and your glazer. Well, yeah, that is different. But then look at the supply chains that are behind that.
Right.
And so, what we really have to start thinking about as we go through, we've experienced it last year, we're experiencing it this year. We have to think about this differently, right? And so really, I would argue that today, doing things in the same fashion that they've been done for the last 10 years is actually more risk inherent than it is to approach it differently. We're seeing supply chains bottlenecked. I mean, every time you go on to the New York Times, right, supply chain, no matter what industry, is all over the front page, right? And so when you start thinking about that and you start going, we have to do things differently, we have to adjust, we have to be able to overcome and have flexibility. That's what really is diversifying the risk and removing it. So while it's a different approach for a lot of people to think about, one conversation can talk about everything from baseboard all the way to window wall, at the same time, this was built on relationships with an incredibly strong supply chain. It was built, through the, awesome experience that our team has. And that's what we're bringing. This wasn't done from a shot from the hip perspective, right? This was well thought out. And the offerings we're bringing are meant to actually reduce the risk. And they're ones that we're confident standing behind.
Right. So let's get into the risk of the assembly of assemblies, right? This is something that we talked about offline. And then once we're done with kind of understanding this, let's actually get into the product line and talk about it a little bit. So when you talk about assembly of assemblies, we're talking about packaging product together. And what you guys are doing is taking a very unique approach. And I think we're going to show that here in just a few minutes. What does assembly of assemblies mean?
So assembly of assemblies is really thinking about when you think about a building, whether it's a commercial building, a multifamily building, or even a single family home. And when you start thinking about this, a building is one giant assembly that then has a bunch of sub-assemblies in it that then even have sub-assemblies to those. And so, when you think about how do you start putting this building together more efficiently, right? We all face the labor shortages in the field. We all face material constraints. We all face, an increased capital cost now with interest rates going up. So how do we actually start removing costs without hurting design, without hurting some of the features of the building, and then also without having to reduce the quality? And so that's what we look at. And so, when you get involved in a job, depending on where you are in that job cycle, you have to be able to approach these in a much different manner. If you're getting in right up front at conceptual design and it's really in its infancy, you can start talking about full-blown pods, kitchen pods, bath pods, and everything like that, because you have the ability to design around them and set that up for success. But if you're getting into the building towards, an IFC set, maybe what you're looking for there is actually just an intelligently kitted package that's, done and it's packaged up in the reverse order of what a trade partner is going to require. And so we have to have that flexibility in order to drive forward. And, while it may not seem like, that complicated of a solution to reverse pack a plumbing package or a lighting package or anything like that, it actually does make a big difference on the job site. No longer do you have the trips back to the truck because there's screws missing or nails missing. You've got this right in the way that the trade contractor could be in the unit or be in the room or on the floor, pick what they need and move on to the next, right? And so that over time, over the full course of a build, significantly reduces the time that people have to be out on the job site. It reduces lost time. And so when we look at these assembly of assemblies, you have to look at the job and you have to identify what will fit for that job based off its life cycle and the stages it's at.
Reverse pack. Explain what that means. I'm not sure everybody on the call here is gonna or listening is gonna understand that.
Yeah, so a reverse package is basically thinking, and we talk with our trade partners and understand, like, okay, when you walk into the unit and you have XYZ scope, what's the first component you need? Okay, well, that's the last component that should go into the box. Yeah, because how often do you open up something from even IKEA or any of these, like, let's use furniture as an example, and you need part A, and part A is somewhere in the middle, or you opened the wrong side of the box and now it's on the bottom, and you end up with everything just spread out across the floor, and you're searching for it, right? That's inefficient, right? Or getting a pallet showing up to the job site with a faucet, another pallet with the hoses, and the third pallet with the silicone, and then you got fasteners over here. And so you have to go to each one instead of having, this is unit 302, this is what I need as I progress through this, right? And so reverse packaging is intended that the first thing that when you open that pallet, open that crate or that box, the first thing sitting there on top is the very first thing that that trade partner or installer needs.
It just
Yeah,
makes
right. It's yeah.
I do that because being in the offsite space, modular world, and all this, and being a builder with panelization and modular, for my entire life, the front door would be on the third floor, of a box that has to be carried
Right.
down because it wasn't put where the front door should be put, right, where it's going to be
Hmm.
needed. So I can understand and relate to that, and I'm sure a lot of you out there as well, and in the building world and offsite world get that, and I think it's super, super important to understand. Let's talk about the products, Ken. What
Yeah.
what products are you guys currently bringing to market? And I'm going to share your website if that's okay. Can I do that to
Yeah,
use that as
absolutely.
a show and tell? So let's put this up, inspiring bigger ideas for a better world. And I'm going to be looking over here. But let's get into the products. What do you
Yeah.
want me to? You got construct, connect, and components. That doesn't say faucets, trim, windows. So why don't you
Yep.
walk me through where to go?
Yeah, so I think first I'll give you a high level overview on what those three are, and then we can start diving in. So we've really broken our offerings into three categories, right? Construct, connect, and components. And if we start from the outside of the building in, that's where you start with the construct. That's the window wall, that's the storefront, that's glass rail, that's unitized garage screen. That's what's on the outside of the building. You see it, it's built to the job. It's usually a more substantial product, and it's something that's highly visible, right? And then when you get into the connect, this is something we're really excited about, and we'll drop a little tease now, but we promise we'll come back and give you way more insight. And we'll bring Dan on for that one.
We'll get it out of you today. You
Oh,
wait.
you might sneak it out of me. So when we look at connect, right? Imagine being an interior designer right now for a commercial space. Okay,
Right.
people are going back to the office space, and you've been tasked with doing a TI on this. So you have to come up with a design that meets today's, health conscious and distancing and separation of space. And
Right.
then you also then have to make sure that that design is relevant for the next 5 years until your client wants to do a TI again. Like imagine that level of uncertainty, imagine that level of stress. And so these connect products are actually designed to remove all that stress and uncertainty. And instead of thinking of a wall as something that you put it up and then if you want to move it, you have to throw it away so that it becomes landfill. A
Right.
wall becomes an asset, right? So now you have these wall panels that you can move around in a room in a floor space over a weekend. You can update, you can say, well, right now we're really focused on individual space. So let's create a bunch of individual offices for people, whether they're hoteling offices or permanent spaces. And then you say, okay, now it's 2023, 2024. We really want to get back to a mix of like, individual, isolated space, but then also group spaces. Okay, well now you start taking these walls and instead of throwing them away, bringing in subcontractors, creating a big mess through drywall and paint and sanding and all of that. Now you take these same walls and you rearrange them, right? And so you've avoided a ton of landfill. Two, you're saving yourself time on the flexible readjustment. And then three, you actually have just a good quality product that you can continue to see the benefit from, right? So that's what
Wow.
we're really seeing on Connect. It'll be, it's interior glass walls, it's opaque walls, it's box and box solutions, it's phone booths. So, these things are going to be awesome for the workspace as we start to see doors reopen and everybody trying to understand what does the workspace look like going forward.
Well, in Ken, I also you may not have picked up on it, but you seem to be a health and wellness company for trades out there as well.
Yeah.
If you literally are taking the stress of all of the ordering and everything, and the order it needs to arrive and all the kit of parts together. I mean, there's, like you said, there's a lot of stress involved with making sure things are right, and then it shows up and the
Yeah.
whole job site's a mess. Dot dot dot. What you're saying is we're going to help your mental health and wellness on this, and we're going to help you pull all this together. We're going to do the heavy lifting on the parts and pieces that we have that you
Yeah.
need to make your life better.
Yeah, when you think about everything that a general contractor, a developer, a sub, just install partners, everybody, when you think about when you're on a job site, right? You start day one on that job with a perfect plan.
Yeah.
And then by day two, the plan has already had to change because you run into, unforeseen circumstances,
Right.
not, hidden conditions. You run into all of this. And so they have a ton to think about, right? Getting the proper staff, making sure
Right.
the progress is being made, weather delays, like you name it, and we got it. And so from that standpoint, if we can take any of that out and put that on ourselves, which is done in a factory environment, in a warehouse environment, in an offsite controlled manner, like that's so important for us to be able to do.
Yeah, it definitely is important for you guys to be able to do. So, all right, we talked about construct, we talk about connect. Now we have
Mhm.
components. What do we have for components?
Yeah, so components, when we sat down, we said, okay, what's the state of the supply chain for typical construction components? And we're really focused in the finish area, right? We're not doing a lot of material supply and sourcing and provision out of the rough trades, right? And so, but we looked at this and we said, all right, what do we need to do to be different?
Yep.
What do we need to do in order to provide reliable solutions? You know, we can't say that we're a different company and that we're offering a better solution if our product is stuck in an ocean container off the port of LA like everybody else's, right? We really have to
Right,
think
right.
about this differently because otherwise we're just another brand that's providing, maybe a slightly differentiated offering. And so as we go through this, that's what we really set out. And so we reevaluated the supply chain.
Okay.
And we said, okay, we need to move more into the Western Hemisphere. So, when we start talking about our components, right? A big offering for us is plumbing finish kits, right? So faucets, tubs, showers, uh, sinks, looking at that. And so that's right now. You talked about availability in the beginning. We're
Right.
actually able to come through and say, we will get you your components and here's where it's coming, right? Here's when it's coming in. And we're right on, right? Maybe there's a day or two different, but this is fantastic, like what we can offer to people. And we're seeing when we actually talk to customers about this, we're seeing our predictability. And then when we actually hit it, they're like, this is great, right? This is so different. And so when we take a look at the components, what we've made sure is that if we're going to offer it to the market, it's coming from a supply chain that is able to perform and that we have confidence in, right?
Right.
We would actually rather limit our offerings, which, that it sounds a little amusing considering we've got such a wide thing, but we'd rather limit our offerings than go out there and offer something we don't know that we're not going to be able to 100% deliver with a good
Sure.
quality product and a successful experience.
Right. Well, why don't we show these products? Let me put the website back up there, and let's talk about this a little bit. So we go to products. I'm going to start with construct. Is that a good place?
Yeah, let's start there.
Right. So here we are. We got construct up. Tell us what we're looking at here. You got building envelopes and facades.
Yeah, so this is a great one for us. So, we actually sat down and we said, all right, here's all these facade products that are out on the market, right? And here's the challenges that you face with each one, whether it's labor, supply chain availability, or costing. And so, we actually set out with a great relationship with CDC, and we said
Okay.
let's design a new system, right? And so, I'll really dive into our window wall here, which also can double up as a storefront product.
Okay.
So we looked at it and we said, all right, one of the big things that we see as a big constraint is strutting, right? So thermal strutting on an extrusion where you combine the polyamide with the extrusions to create the thermal break.
Hmm.
And we said, well, there's really not a ton of worldwide capacity in this. There's a polyamide shortage. How do we do something different here? And so what we came up with is actually a thermal break that is assembled in the factory rather than at a manufacturing plant through strutting. And so that gives us a bunch of different benefits, right?
Wow.
So one is that we can source from anywhere in the world. So if one country runs into a problems with, say, a COVID or a COVID repeat, logistics costs, tariffs, right? We all remember 2018 when tariffs were going crazy, and it was like everybody was scrambling to readjust their supply chain,
Sure.
right? So this allows us to pivot quickly. And it also allows us to build in redundant capacity. And so now we can look at this and say, we can source this from anywhere, we can assemble this anywhere, and we can ship it to anywhere, right? So that's kind of the first part about the predictability. The second thing is that we can take the same set of extrusions and we can adjust the material that is the thermal break, right? So if somebody's looking for a super green LEED building, we can actually flex up the material, maybe a slightly higher cost, but we can basically up rev the material and improve the thermal performance without having to go through a whole new set of aluminum dies, right? And then when you think about, so when we start thinking about tomorrow, right? Like let's think of tomorrow, whether that's 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now. When you put this system on a building, it'll actually have the capability in the future, right? That you can go in there and basically retrofit your facade with a new thermal break, whatever magical material that's going to come out in the future. You could actually retrofit this, one, by taking out a couple panels at a time and deglazing and reglazing and upgrading right in the field. But then the second is you can keep that aluminum, right? So one of the things is, so we actually brought in a sustainability consultant, and she was fantastic and provided a ton of insight into this. When you have a strutted extrusion, unless you cut out the polyamide, it is not recyclable. Right? And so now the way that we've done it and the way that you can remove it, if you do decide you're going to take down the facade, you can take that several 100,000 pounds of aluminum that you put on the building and go recycle it. Right? So we were able to tackle a supply chain issue. We were able to tackle a technology issue and like pushing it to the next level and being able to have flexibility with performance. And then at the same time, 50 years from now, when they're pulling this facade off or they want to upgrade it, they have the ability to actually not just throw it away,
but to reuse it. And the idea that you build a window with the thermal break already in it takes that headache off of the installer.
It does. Right. And so, what it is that when we look at it, we really approach this from doing a unitized perspective, right? There's, it's a common cliche at this point, but there's a shortage of field labor, right? So we need to be able to put this together in a factory successfully and then bring it out to the field and have that all integrated. And so then, but also in the field, be able to upgrade it later on, right? As building codes continue to climb in their stringency, like we have to be able to adjust, pivot, and move ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. So let's adjust, pivot, and move ahead here on this conversation. What else? We got the curtain wall and the exterior storefront. Is there anything you want to touch on these?
So, really what it does is it provides us a total solution portfolio, right? We're working with a developer in San Diego, and half their building is going to be a unitized curtain wall and half the building is going to be a unitized window wall, right? And so by having these multiple product offerings and, we're really working on taking the same approaches with these, it allows us to tie a whole building together, right? So that's really what we like to look at. And as far as the storefront, we actually designed our window wall to be a hybrid to the storefront. So again, we commonize, so we commonized extrusions, we commonized approach. This way we can really consolidate, aggregate, and move forward.
Let's talk about Connect.
All right. So
Connect.
This is going to be a cool one. And I think that this is going to be, as office space really comes back in, this is going to be super important. So, there's really three main parts to the Connect, right? There's the demountable walls, the demountable opaque walls, right? There's the storefronts, which are shown right there. And so, we'll start with the storefronts here. So, there's the opportunity to flex, right? So if you're looking for a low profile U-channel type, that's there. If you're looking for a more traditional 2x4 system, that's there as well. But this Vision One, this is something that we really like, and this is something we really put in front of customers. So this is a low profile system, right? It's under 2 inches in each direction from a profile standpoint. And the same system can accommodate a 1/4 inch all the way up to a 1 inch piece of glass. And so what this allows you to be able to do is you can have a workspace where, let's say you have executive or legal or HR offices, on one part of the building, and you've got you just kind of the typical operations in the other. You can say, okay, on these 4 offices, I need high STC, high privacy, acoustic solutions there. Great, same frame, upgrade the glass. And then in the other part, we can go with a more typical 3/8 half-inch solution. And so the ability to provide, the different solutions in the same floor plate, while not having a, this large footprint there, that's something for us that is really important. And you can see right there the outstanding performance. This is something that we're very proud of. So we've had testing done at up to STC 39 when we've put a 5/8 laminate into the system. And so when you start thinking about that versus the other options that are out in the market, this really takes acoustic privacy in an office to the next level.
Right. Wow. All right. I love it. I love it. All right, let's go. Let's keep moving here.
Let's keep moving.
You have the different storefronts, interior,
Yep.
1, 2, 3. What I really like about this idea, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later in the show when we wrap up, but it's about thinking about tomorrow today. And
Yeah.
everything we're talking about here is going to tie into the ending conversation
Yep.
that we're talking about. So, all right, so we got the KOVA Connect side of this. Now
Yep.
we have the component side. And this
Yeah.
is super interesting. So walk us through what is in the components.
Yeah, so the components, and this is where people you really have to wrap their heads around it first, because the first conversation they go, hold on, repeat that. You've got baseboard, faucets, lighting, and mirrors. Like I help explain, right? And so components, really what this is this is built for supply chain optimization. This is built for this is built to really provide solutions, right? And
Right.
so this is where KOVA and the Go Build, this is really where we excel, right? And so on the components, one is we've reimagined and reevaluated where the supply chain should be at. We're heavily focused in the Western Hemisphere because we want to remove some of that uncertainty around port congestion, logistics, the ability that if there is a concern, when you're in the Western Hemisphere, I can be in a factory, our supply chain team can be in a factory, our quality team can be in the factory, sometimes same day, very worst case the next day, right? You don't have to hop in a 14-hour flight, totally lose track of what time of day it is, and then go into the factory, right? So the level of rapid response that we can have by realigning the supply chain is super important, right? And so when we look at this, we also are focusing on quality. We want to make sure that the products that we're putting our name on have great quality, and that we can continue to push these out to the market and stand behind a great warranty, right? And so, like the faucets, right? These are solid brass faucets, right? They're meant to last. And so when people say, well, do you believe in the quality? And I say, yes. I actually just ripped out everything my builder put in the house and put in our KOVA faucets because they were that much better. So, we're putting our money where our mouth is and actually putting these components into our own homes day in and day out. And so when we see this is what we want to bring to the market. Not only that, but we're focused on how our suppliers and how our partners are looking at sustainability. Is there waste streams? Is there, making sure there's not water pollution going on?
Right.
What are they doing with scrap material? How do they bake that right back into the manufacturing process for the next batch, right? And so that's really what we're looking for. And what's great about this is, just even looking at the bath, this provides, we go back to that reverse kitting, we go back to the smart kits and even pods. This provides one holistic, congruent feel, look, and touch all the way through it, right? And that's really what we want to see. And so, trim, as we go through this on the trim is probably the last thing on anybody's mind, right? Unless you're a trim carpenter, that this is the scope you're doing. You probably don't pay attention to the baseboard in your house. You probably don't pay attention to it as when you're looking at a set of plans for other scopes, right? But what's interesting is we've seen, and it's starting to recover a little bit, but not fully. We started to see a shortage of trim in the U.S. Again, like this, it's a piece of wood that's painted. You don't think a lot about it, right? But you start to see it. You go into the big box retailers and they've got signs up that say, limit of 10 pieces or 15 pieces per person when you purchase it. Other people just can't even get stock. And so, what we realized on the trim is, hey, we have an opportunity with a North American-based source to provide a product that we believe in, that comes at a good value, and that we know we can get, right? And so that's where you see components. It goes through this whole evaluation of, do we know we can get it? Do we trust our partner? Do we have high quality? Do we bring good value, right? And if we don't check all those boxes, we're not doing it. And so that's why, even though, again, tying back to the risk, because it's different, you see this broad catalog and this broad component list, but they've all been vetted and it's all gone through, right? And so, we're not putting out there something that we don't know that's going to work.
So let's put a bow on all this, because again, I mean,
Yep.
I said it earlier, right? It's kind of until you understand where you're going with this, it feels kind of
Hmm.
eclectic, right? We got window, we
Yeah.
got facade, we got interior build out wall sections. You have trim, you have faucets, shower heads and faucets, sinks.
Yep.
And I think this is where, what's the bigger vision on all of this is one question. The other question that I really like about this is you're guaranteeing the supply chain. You're saying
Yeah.
we have it, we will guarantee you that you will get what you order from us. So I mean there's two
Yeah.
big things there. So why don't you what's the vision of this and where's the future of some of this headed?
Yeah. No, I mean that's great, and it really does tie together because when you look at it right now, if you just took a snapshot, it's like, okay, this is all over the place. Like, what's going on here, right? And so when we look at it and where we're headed and what this really is setting the foundation for, it's going back to that, the assembly of assemblies, right? So to be able to provide value add, to be able to enter a project at multiple levels of offsite manufacturing and fabrication, right? To be able to go through and ensure that buildings are going. And as we see, and it's not just making sure it's there, but it's making sure it's there at the right price. And so as we see interest rates climb and as we see capital get more expensive, one of the things that's going to be a big pressure point as we go through this is ensuring that the products, like good, reliable products, can be delivered to these buildings and installed at this right price, right? Because as the interest rate goes up, buildings automatically get more expensive. And so we need to make sure that we're providing good value to partners. And that's what you're going to see is you're going to start to see this broad swath of components start tying together into becoming a bigger and bigger sub-assembly going into the ultimate assembly, which is the building.
Bigger and bigger sub assembly. I can maybe read on the lines on where that might be heading with you guys. We're looking at the product line, but part of all of this and where you're headed, in my view, right? Thinking about tomorrow, today is one thing,
Hmm.
and all of these products, like you said, not just the windows, are interchangeable and can
Yeah.
grow with the building, with the consumer, with the business, whatever it is, and that's a big part of your vision on how do you solve that problem for the future today? Yes?
Yeah, it is, right? So natural resources, they're getting harder and harder to find. They're getting more and more expensive, and so we have to really make sure that, like, yes, we have to build a building today, but we have to make sure that those components last, that those components are replaceable, upgradable, or at least recycled, and to be able to reclaim the raw material back, right? And so we have to be conscious towards the future, but also understanding that there's still this requirement that even if you are the most forward conscious and forward thinking, you
Yep.
still have to have this ability to hit the right price point today, right? So it's this balancing act of availability, tomorrow, recycle, reusable, reclaimable, and then also at the same point, it can't be more expensive, right? Like it's great if you can get it, but if nobody's buying it, then it's kind of useless, right? So it becomes that, and so as we tie all that together, working through making sure that we're ready for tomorrow's build environment. We're ready for the requirements on buildings for the future. And then being able to put that into continually growing scope for offsite manufacturing. That's really where this foundation layer that exists now is moving, and it's moving quickly.
Where else can anybody go find the products that you have, guaranteed delivery, packed the way that you need to use it, reverse pack, right?
Yeah.
So to speak. And I think that's amazing. Now, this is a big question that I want to know. These are
Okay.
big buildings, big opportunities, big facades, big interiors. You got to be using some tech to do all this. Something's back there. What can you share with us?
Oh, this was the one you're gonna try and get out of me. So what I will say,
Come
I'll
on,
give you
I'm
I'll
fishing.
give you hey, I'll give you a little bit now, but you know what? I promise we'll come back and we'll give you the full look on this in the future,
Yeah.
right? So you're right. There is some great tech that's already backing and then that's coming as well. And so one of the awesome things in general about what we do and what we're going after and is our partners, right? Whether
Right.
our partners are on the tech side, whether they're on the supply side, the manufacturing side, or our customer side, right? What's great about this industry is there's so much talent and there's so much brain power out there, and that we continue to look at and love to have. We love to have the ability to continue to collaborate and just think through how to make things better, right? We in no way believe that we have the answer to every problem out there, right? But we also know that if we get the right people in the right room, and whether it's a virtual room or in person, like we have the ability to do awesome things, right? And so the tease I will give you on the tech side is that there is something on the facade side that's coming late Q3, early Q4 that we'll roll it out publicly. We're already testing it with a couple customers now, but it's going to remove design cycles out of buildings. It's going to reduce the strain on architects and designers to be experts in every facet of this thing, and it's going to actually speed up the process. And so we all know that whether it's direct labor in the field or indirect through design, sourcing, the sales cycle, if you're removing cycles and if you're removing time out of that, you're removing cost, right? And so, the platform that we're gonna roll out, and like I said, I promise we'll come back and give you a full look at it. But what it's going to do is it's going to create this ability to sit in the room with an architect, design owner, GC, everything, and actually iterate live on facade requirements and what that looks like, and understand the impacts downstream. So this is something we're really happy about. We're excited. We think it's going to be a game-changing solution for this, and we're going to continue to back ourselves with technology as it becomes available. We're also going to make sure the tech we use and the tech we integrate is useful tech, right? We aren't just going to pile in tech for the sake of tech, right? So we're going to mix in traditional methods. We're going to mix in these new products, and they're going to continue to evolve and start to integrate into each other. So there is some awesome tech coming, and we really appreciate our partners on this, and it's going to be a blast to roll it out and see the market reaction.
Yeah, definitely is going to be a blast. So let's just define two things before we wrap up here. Who are your customers? Who are you currently working with?
Yeah, so our customers, they range, right? So a lot of time with developers, a lot of time with GCs, a lot of time with architects, and that's really where we have the ability to help impact and drive efficiency in upfront, right? And so we also have subcontractors and trade partners as customers. So and when we approach a building and let's say we approach a developer, we know that a developer's not necessarily going to cut a purchase order or a contract themselves, right? But what we do is we make the pricing model and we make the assumptions so transparent that any proposal or pricing that we put forward to a developer or to a GC can be handed off instantly to the right end customer and end consumer.
Yeah, love it. So we got a lot of people out there right now. Listen, everybody, if you're not following KOVA, following Ken, and everything they're doing, please make sure you go and subscribe to their channels and follow them and do business with them. That's what it's all about. That's why we showcase people that are trying to build it better, and they are off to a great start with all this. I see Lawrence out here. Lawrence has a lot of comments. Can't get to them all. Supply chain comes after conceptual solution has been established, he says there at the end. But if I really went through it, we'd have to read a book. Lawrence, you are one writer. I love it. He says it is a step in the right direction as an option to preconceived stack boxes, but still has a way to go to meet market needs and user preferences, where architects have the holistic training and conceptualize the assembled solution. So, training. How do you do that, Ken? Let's talk about it real quick. How do you get people to buy in to what you guys are offering?
Yeah, so one of the things is we really pride ourselves on being available to the customers and the education process, right? And we're going to continue to keep that. So whether it's sitting down and saying, okay, we see how you have this in this way, what if is there tolerance or ability to move a little left, move a little right, up, down? And if not, then we understand why. Like, why are what's the constraint that's holding it there? And when we provide that, we provide those questions and opportunities, with a thought in mind of, are we saving time? Are we saving money? Or do we have concerns over, hey, maybe we're pushing the limits on a solution that's there, right? So we go through this education process, that we want to make sure that we aren't just selling a faucet, right? Or we aren't just selling the window, right? We're making sure we're selling the right thing for what the end customer, whether that's the owner, developer, or even resident or homeowner, is going to need and want, and what makes that successful, right? There's nothing more frustrating than, as an individual, you move into an apartment, you move into a condo, you move into a house,
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this is really frustrating. Like my window's bent, or my faucet broke, the handle broke off the first time that that I touched it, right? So what we want to make sure is that, like we said, there's the training up front and the education, talking about a total cost, right, and the total opportunity cost, but then also that these are the right products going in, and so that creates the full circle going back to it.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Well, listen, a big shout out and thank you again to our sponsors, Ben from Forward Solutions Group, who, by the way, I saw tuned in today. So we might got to say hi to Ben Hershey. I don't know if you know Ben, but Ben does say, Ken, appreciate the systems KOVA is bringing to the market. Providing a systems kit of parts to the field or the factory are essential to smart components, smart manufacturing. And that guy right there, if you don't know, Ben Hershey, knows a lot about it. His dad started the SBCA, the Building Systems Component side of the industry, and Ben works in offsite manufacturing globally. So if you don't know him, now's a chance to say hi to him, everybody that's out there. All right, Ken, what did we not cover, right? And what did I not ask you that we should be telling our audience today before we wrap up?
Oh, I don't know, Dave. You got a lot out of me, probably even more than our marketing team wanted me to say. So we'll see. So kudos to you on that one. But we really appreciate the opportunity to be on here. We're excited about what we've brought to market so far, and what we're going to continue to roll out through the rest of this year. There's going to be a lot of exciting product announcements, tech announcements, and so we really look forward to bringing that to market and just finding the right people to partner with to continue to drive this forward. Right? Obviously, we want to continue to grow, but the common thread through everybody that works at KOVA is that we want to see this industry continue to drive forward, improve, and to make changes. Right? We've got to build faster, so that's why we're here. We want people to do the building, go
build faster, and build it better.
Build it better. Yep, exactly.
That's right. Well, listen, everybody, that's a wrap on today's show with Ken. Ken, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere, Ken. We'll come back to you in just a moment.
All right.
For everybody else that's out there, you want to join us Friday. Friday, we are giving away all kinds of swag on the show. We're celebrating 2 years of BS Friday with Mark Barenaked Willie. Might have some surprise guests as well, so stay tuned. 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. You do not want to miss it. We're giving away a ton of swag. Hopefully my little ticker swag giver away thinger works. Sometimes it gives us fits, but we're going to keep going with it. And we're going to keep bringing people like Ken and KOVA onto the show so we can all learn how to build it better, and you can meet new people to take your business to the next level each and every week. So, Ken, you are amazing. I'll come back to you after the outro. Everybody else,
Awesome.
We will see you Friday, so make sure you tune in on BS Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you guys. Bye. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.